Welcome back to an extended conversation with Jake Koenig. Today we're going to go over Vim and how he uses it. So if you're looking to get into it, this is the episode to watch. Jake, pleasure having you back. How are you doing?
Great. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I was really excited when you asked if I could talk about Vim. I told my wife that you asked, and she was like, the real trick would be getting him to not talk about it.
Perfect.
But yeah, I was actually planning on asking if I could talk about it before you even asked me, because I saw your dot files and I had some thoughts.
I love how much developers love Vim. You know that like meme of the guy standing at the urinal and like one guy walks up right next to the other guy at the urinal. It's like, I use Vim.
Okay, and I made a little keylogger so you can see how I'm doing things.
Oh, nice.
That'll
nice.
actually be helpful. Okay, so yeah, Vim's so great. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about, because it seems relevant to this show, is chat Vim. So it's a Vim plugin. I'll just open it up. Yeah, so normally if I was not screen sharing, I'd type GX, which opens links. It's actually really cool, but because I'm screen sharing, it would like open it in the wrong browser, so I had to copy paste instead. But yeah, so ChatVim is actually how I talk to LLMs like 99% of the time. I use the OpenAI mobile app when I'm on the go, though I actually have Termux on my phone, so I can use ChatVim on my phone. But you can just talk to GPT like right in your Vim. So who am I talking to? Yeah, and it just works. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend you I wouldn't necessarily recommend you use my plugin because it's very simple and it's like not super well maintained. But I do recommend you talk to GPT in Vim, because I think it's just really great. So it's like way easier to like make customizations and software for yourself now than it's ever been. So I wrote this myself, along with ChatGPT, like over 2 years ago now, or I guess it couldn't have been 2 years ago. Never mind. So I saved the chat and found it, so you can see. It made the whole plugin basically. This is actually before GPT-4, so this is GPT 3.5. I don't know why it says 4.0 here, because it doesn't even remember. But yeah, so I always talk to GPT in Vim. Sorry, I keep saying GPT, but Claude 3.5 really at this point. So another thing I recommend is you make a command to open your chat file really easily. So for me, that's leader EQ. And then it just opens right up and I can just start asking it questions. And as you can see, this is a 47,000 line file. I know what you're thinking, that's it. But every so often it starts lagging Vim, so I have to reset. So this is like the fourth time. So I probably have around 200,000 lines of Q&A with LLMs in here. Yeah, actually, this is one of the reasons I have to use Vim. I can't use VS Code, because I open so many files that like it would start to lag VS Code. Yeah, I asked GPT to write like a one-liner to count how many lines were open in all across all buffers I'd open, and I think it was like 300K or something. Because I open all my terminals in Vim too, so it adds up. Okay, so yeah, you can. How my plugin works is when you type a double greater than, it like resets the conversation. So everything I write after this would like be a new conversation, and then if you want to continue, you just use one. I'm on the Tool Use podcast, showing off your capabilities, and then leader G. And yeah, actually, I just changed it from GPT to LLM, because when I made it originally, like GPT just was the only LLM worth talking to.
Yeah.
And yeah, and actually just until Wednesday, the default model when you talk to it was GPT 3.5 Turbo. If you remember that one.
Back when it was magic and we weren't so entitled.
Yeah, it really was magic. It still is. It's really delightful. Okay, so yeah, so you can actually do this in any file. So maybe 90% of the time I do it in this file where I've got like all my Q&A, but you can also do it in other files. So like if I open my vimrc, I could ask it to explain a line. So I don't know, let's see what's here. No, that one's no good. Let's ask it to explain that. So I could say, can you explain this? And then it'll explain what it does. So it does so. Oh yeah, so this line is actually really relevant because it changes the formatting of Markdown in files. So if I go up to like a Python block, I don't know the last time I asked for Python, but notice how I have syntax highlighting in this file in this Markdown block, and that this doesn't happen by default. You do it with this line. So I've only got it for the languages listed, but you can like list other languages. As you can see, there's over 100 Python blocks in this file in the bottom right. Yeah, so when I first made the plugin, this is one of the reasons I said you should use it, because actually when I made the plugin on chatgpt.com didn't have syntax highlighting on their code blocks. It was like all like gray. They had nice blocks, but there was no syntax highlighting. So for a bit, we were ahead in features on ChatVim.
Nice.
And yeah, another thing you can do is like ask it to rewrite things. So can you rewrite this in Lua? And yeah, it'll start rewriting it. I don't know Lua, so I can't tell you if this is right, but it looks right. Okay. Okay. So what other tips do I have? So I already told you about code blocks, and setting up syntax highlighting. Oh yeah, so by default, there's no easy way to copy blocks, like these Markdown blocks. So in Vim, you probably like are used to yank in parentheses, like yi parentheses. Like if I wanted to yank this, I could do yank in bracket and then paste it. But by default, there's no way to do that for Markdown blocks. So if you do talk to GPT in Vim, you're going to want to write one. So this is in my dot files, which is open source. But I just asked GPT for it, or Claude 3.5. Yeah, so yank inliner block. This function was written by it. And because everything's in this one file, we can probably find it. Oh yes, this is the conversation where I asked for it. Oh yeah, after our blog post, I asked it for feedback. Honestly, I haven't found it that good for giving feedback, but I asked it anyway. This is the conversation where I actually made it. So yeah, like, can you write some Vim script that does yank in ampersand, or not ampersand, apostrophe. And so this block, it mostly worked. Oh yeah, I also changed it from a GPT to LM, so it says GPT this far back. So it mostly worked, but I wanted like a few changes. Like when I yanked it, it would include the initial line, and I wanted it to fix that. And if like the code block contained these markdown blocks, which it did in this example, then it would break it. And also it didn't work with registers. And yeah, just if the few back and forths, it was able to do almost all of it, except for the register bit. That bit wasn't so good. I think I use an F-bomb. Are we allowed to curse on this show?
Yeah.
So yeah, it struggled with that one. But yeah, now I can. Wait, why is it? Maybe this block doesn't work because it contains. Where am I? Okay. Huh. I don't know. Maybe there's a bug if there's lines that contain apostrophes. Oh yeah, I think if the line it's on contains an apostrophe, it probably tries to copy like single apostrophe to single apostrophe, which is breaking it there. Okay, but it mostly works if there's no apostrophes. Okay, what else? So yeah, you're definitely gonna want that. Okay, and in general, LLMs make configuration like so much easier. So I think like people should like spend a little more time like making these little tools, like because of Jevons paradox. So if you're not familiar, Jevon was an economist in the 19th century who observed that as coal factories or coal engines got more efficient, the demand for coal in Britain greatly increased. So you might think like naively we can do the same stuff with so much less. We'll like use less, but in reality, like there's all these applications that became like finally tractable. So actually, the demand for coal went way up, and really this rules like everything around us. So like as like inference for LLMs gets cheaper, you might think, oh, we'll like save electricity, but no, we're gonna want to infer way more. And the same thing is true for configuring your tools. Like if it takes you forever to make like a tiny change to your editor, you probably just don't want to do it. But when it's easy, you might want to do it all the time. So in that vein, I've got a few recommendations. You should make a mapping that opens your vimrc. So for me, that's -edit vim. And I've got these like for all kinds of things. So I can edit my vimrc with ev. I just used ev everywhere. So in the vim context, it stands for edit vim, but I do it everywhere. So this is my vimrc, or this is my Z shell RC, which isn't as developed as my vimrc. Oh yeah, so just to give credit, that tip's from Steve Losh's book, Learn Vim Script the Hard Way, which is where I learned a lot of this stuff. So it's a very dated book now because it's like pre-NeoVim. It's all Vim script, not like Lua or Python. It recommends pathogen for plugin management, which now you don't really need. Now you can just kind of clone the plugin to a certain path, and it works well. But it's still a good book, and his philosophy for how to use Vim is, I think, very good. So particularly the early chapters, I think, are still relevant. Okay, so yeah, just to give some examples of things that I've done recently that like wouldn't have been worth it to do in the recent past. There's that I can now copy links to GitHub. So if I type leader gh, this line is copied. I don't know if you can see it in the bottom, but it'll go right there. So this makes it like collaborating really easy, because like if I want to like share the location in the code I am with someone else, I can just like type that and then share it, and then they'll be able to see like exactly what I'm seeing. So yeah, that one was written entirely by GPT. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, so this one it basically one-shotted this one, but I wanted like a few changes. Where are we? Oh, where oh wait, this I did the same thing where it appears twice because I wrote a blog post about it and then pasted my whole blog post in for like feedback. So that wasn't the actual conversation. This is the actual conversation. So I asked it to write a whole function, and then it basically worked, but I needed like a few differences. Oh yeah, so I wanted it to use the path of the file, not my current path, because sometimes I'll like open something in another directory and I want it to like use that file's repo, not like where I started, which was incorrect in the first one. And then I also, oh wait, that's something else, I guess. I thought I also changed something with oh yeah, and then I also wanted it to read the branch from from the GitHub repo, and not just assume it was master like it did originally, or I guess it assumed it was main. But yeah, now it uses whatever my current branch is. So it was just kind of 3-shot, I guess, but it worked the first time. I just needed some other stuff. So that's something I did recently that has been nice. And then yeah, copy markdown blocks. It basically did that itself. Chat Vim. It basically did that itself. This keylogger up here, where you can see the keys I'm typing, it basically did that too. That one I can't show you in the chat because I actually kind of inlined that one with like the flow I showed you earlier, where I like put like asterisk at the beginning and then said, hey, rewrite this with these changes, and it was a pretty cool way to work. Yeah, and then my other piece of advice is to use the Vim terminal. So for the longest time, so Vim types are always recommended people to use tmux, and for the longest time I used tmux, and tmux is fine, but I don't think it's really necessary to like go deep on tmux anymore. So as you can see, I'm still using tmux, and I still use tmux for 2 reasons. One is like I'm always accidentally hitting Control W because I think the browser has focus, but it's actually Alacrity, and then I close Alacrity, and that's horrible. So if you use tmux, it's easy to recover. And just to separate things that are totally different. So here I'm like have my Vim set up to show off, but I like over here I've got LLM chat. So if I have totally separate things, I'll open a new window. But mostly I just use. So previously I used tmux and I would open like panes to use the terminal. But now I just open the terminal in Vim. So I rebound that to Control X, and now when you hit Control X, it opens the terminal. And you might think like, this is no different. Like all we did was kind of turn things inside out. Like, but actually there's a huge number of benefits to having your terminal open in Vim. And my favorite is GF. So let's see if I can demonstrate that. Let's grep for something. Let's grep for I don't know, auto command in Vim. Oh, I need -R. So now you see how grep outputs like these paths. Now we can just type GF to go to the file. This is especially useful with tests. So unfortunately my .files don't have tests, so I can't like show that here. But like you run the test, you see all your errors, and then you can like go to them just with GF. So I don't know why Control O is failing. And so that's the GF is the main benefit that like I think is like really delightful. But then everything you know about Vim now applies to navigating your terminal. So like, say I want to like search it. I can just use my normal search like question mark and go up to the top here with .files. And like you can use star. And now you can kind of get these things with tmux. So let me open my tmux RC. Yeah, you can kind of, oh no, not that line. This line changes your tmux to kind of behave like Vim. But it's slightly different. There's all these things that like just don't work. Like Control O. I use Control all the time when navigating Vim, but it doesn't work in tmux. But if you just open your terminal in Vim, then everything's the same. You've got your relative line numbers. You don't have to configure that. You've got the color scheme's the same, just everything. So it just gives the whole flow like kind of holism. It's very nice. Yeah, what else? Oh yeah, git diff is another example of a command where you like see file names. So, and then I can just go and yeah, I guess this is the file we were on. But to make git diff work, you can't just run git diff. You have to add this no prefix command. So, because if you run git diff without it, then I don't fully understand why git does this, but it prefixes them with like a/ and b/, so then it won't work because it'll say this file doesn't exist. Oh yeah, another thing that's really useful is this this is sort of related to opening your terminal in Vim, but you should have a command to run the current file with like your language. So let's ask for a Fibonacci function in Python. Okay, so here we got it. Thanks. So let's open example.py, paste that in. Now, so if I run leader I, it opens the Python interpreter, I for interpreter, with like this sourced. So it ran. And not only did it run, it imported everything into the interpreter. So if I want to run the function I defined, it's like right there.
Especially for these small scripts that we're putting together, being able to do this rapid iteration is super cool.
Yeah. So it all kind of it works well together. Where like I talk to ChatGPT, I get my script. It's like yank in apostrophe edit example to like paste it, and then -i, and I'm just running it, and it's really fast. Yeah, I should actually maybe make that just like one command where like if I'm in a markdown block, I can just like run one thing and it like opens, saves, and runs right away. Okay, and then the last thing about opening the terminals in Vim is I recommend you rename them, because by default, if you just open a new terminal, what is the name if you just open a new terminal? It's, I guess, named term : the current working directory, the process ID, and Z shell. But if you can write a command to rename them, right? And then when you like run something, it is renamed. So like now, if I close this terminal, I can find it really easily. Control P is a fuzzy finder that searches your files, but then if you hit F, it searches your buffers, and then I can get right back. And so for this example, for the LS example, it's not like useful, but I use this all the time with like long running processes. So here in like LLM chat, I've got like 2 server processes running, like the front end and the back end. And if I close them, I can get right back to them by like searching. So if I hit term, I can see all my open terminals. And then if I want like the API server, I can get right there. So that's Control P. I'm not like a big plugin user, but I use Control P a lot. I think it's the only one outside of ChatVim that I use all the time. Yeah, sorry. Hopefully that wasn't too much or too fast. But yeah, any questions?
So many, but no, I'm good. I need to like just like look into basic NeoVim so I can like really have questions. But no, that's super cool. I mean, it's the coolest thing to me about NeoVim is just how fast it, like you mentioned, it's like how fast it is to just navigate your terminal and be able to make little windows inside your terminal and have multiple things going on. Like, it's just really cool because I have to do so much mouse clicking to do any of that, which is not fun. So it's definitely something I need to learn. I just need to like sit down, take a couple hours, and just keep practicing it over and over again, and do the thing you did, Mike, where you just kind of like force yourself to use it to get better. Just have to dive in and do it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not 100% sure I would actually recommend NeoVim to like someone who doesn't use it. Someone who does use NeoVim, I would recommend they use like the NeoVim terminal, and I'd recommend they talk to LLMs inside NeoVim. But I'm not. I feel like I've been using it for years now, and I'm only finally like getting to this place where like I feel like it's like just a pure delight to use and actually a lot faster. But I don't know I guess I probably could have done other stuff at that time, which might have been better. But who's to say? I
do wish I learned it earlier in my career. I think there would have been like some compounding benefits if I did it earlier rather than wait till now. But I don't know. It's kind of like there's almost like a puzzle to it, like a game where you're like, I want to do this task. Instead of just thinking, oh, click, drag, highlight, copy, whatever, you can actually try to figure out different key combinations. And then I've actually had it where I have my terminal open that I'm editing and another terminal with Olama running Llama 3.1 or something, and I'll say, I need to accomplish this. What's the most efficient way in Vim? And it'll tell me one way. I'm like, oh, cool. Like I approached it this way. I learned this new like key binding or something. So I think there's like this intrinsic like creativity or problem solving aspect to using Vim that's just like you said, delightful. Like I enjoy doing it. But I still like sometimes I open up Cursor and I toggle whether the Vim extension is enabled or disabled, because sometimes like I don't want to think right now. I just need to solve this problem or write a blog post or something. I just want what I've been using for the last decade. So I just want to do something familiar. But I don't know. Part of the reason I got into development was just the fun of problem solving, and this kind of adds a new dimension to that.
Yeah. I think the first editor I used was like Eclipse, and it was like so slow and like heavy, and I felt like there was all this stuff in it that I wasn't using. And I really like how like minimalist NeoVim is, where like my whole screen is just text that I asked to be opened. There's no like menus that I never really look at but are just open because that's how it looks.
And even the community around it, I am a fan of using a bunch of plugins, because as I transition from what I've been familiar with something new, it's nice to have a bit of familiarity. So even things like the file tree, which I had open before, I don't use it for navigation. Like I still do my like leader SF to search files, but it's nice having like the outline saying, oh, everything in this directory. Am I in the right directory? And it's just like my transition. And there's so many cool repos that are like 100 stars, 150 stars that are just like someone's creativity that they're like, I want to solve this problem. Here's how I did it. And you can just run it, add it to your config, test it out, and you're like, this isn't for me. Or the one I recently discovered, Oil, which allows you to manage your file system in a buffer like any NVim file. I'm like, oh wow, I don't even have to live.
I think I should use that one. Yeah,
it's cool. Before I used to have two terminals open. One I would like touch file, create the file, and go into NVim and edit. But now I just like split, open up a new pane, and then Oil, like create a new file, go back over, and it's just one of those things where it's one less thing to like exit to and switch back and forth. And even though I'm still like technically context switching from like file editing to file creation, with it being the same tool and following the same workflow, I find it's just a little more streamlined. And it's probably just like the novelty what I get so giddy over, but it's just one of those things where because someone on the internet was like, I want to create this tool, I was able to pull it in, test it, and be like, yes, this is now part of my workflow. And it just made it like that much more unique.
Yeah, it's so much easier to learn now. There's LLMs. Like I'll ask it all kinds of things, like to prepare for this talk. You notice how like when I open a new terminal, it doesn't resize everything? You might think that's the default behavior, but it's actually not. The default behavior is like let's see if I can find it where I asked it. Yeah, so the default behavior is like it equalizes everything after you open, and then I just asked like Claude if there's like a way to fix that, and it said set no equal always, and it worked. And I think this one would have been really hard to find with like Google or something. I don't know. I probably could have Googled that one, but it's just easier with LLMs.
Yeah, oh yeah. The amount of times I've just like copied the raw of a README, put it into Claude, and say, I want to configure this optimally, give me some options, and then it'll just be like, this flag does this is this. It's almost like reading the TLDR of a README and be able to like quickly extract what I find useful, especially if I compound it, being like, create a project. Ty's been huge on Claude projects, and being able to have a few things there that it can kind of reference and use as context has been really quick for saying, this is the preferred preference I have, this is the conventions I like to follow, create something new, but adhere to this, and then I don't have to give it the same context every single time. It's just that much faster to get like the tool the way I want it to be. And like we said earlier, and I guess on Tuesday, the customizing tools for each individual person is very cool, because that's the way software is going. Like everyone's going to be able to use software that's customized for themselves. So we as developers kind of like lead that trend, making our tools customized for us, and then we just build faster.
You had this really cool idea at some point, Mike, with Vim and LLMs of like, I think to make LLMs better at coding, they're going to have to really understand better how humans code. And I don't know how relevant it is, but this idea of like you have at the very top of your window here, Jake, like all the last 200 keystrokes. Like if you could record the keystrokes of a standard developer going through their workday in Vim, changing a bunch of files and whatever else, maybe there's some sort of interesting information there on how humans navigate like coding interfaces and how maybe an agent could do it better. I don't know, if I can't learn Vim, maybe an AI agent can't learn Vim, but I feel like that's a really cool idea. I mean, like it's a single interface that's all keyboard, that's all inputs, that shows how a developer goes through their entire workday. So there's some gold mine of information there for LLMs, and I'm not sure exactly how we get to it, but I thought it was a super cool idea.
I made another Vim plugin. I shouldn't have uninstalled it so I could show it. This one wasn't as developed as ChatVim, which is I guess saying something. But yeah, it was you could run a command and like a request, and it would call an LLM and it would pipe it right into Vim. So you could like the prompt was like whatever you output will be piped right into Vim, and so you could ask it, hey, can you make this file and write a poem in it, and it would like write :E file name, and then CR. I told it to write bracket CR, and it would be like, or maybe I told it to write enter. I forget exactly, but it would work, and it would open a file and it would like write stuff.
Similar to the WTF script that Ty showed, I have this AI CLI tool where I just say AI and then natural language query for the terminal command I want, which just helps me because I'm not great at memorizing syntax. But yeah, it's the ability to pull an LLM into our workflow in a seamless way is going to be like back to our last conversation about the UI unlock, where if we can have it figure out, oh, you know, this path doesn't really work because it's blocking or something like that, or it allows me to get unblocked in certain ways. I think we just got to keep experimenting and see where these plugins work, what really adds to our workflow versus getting in our way. And as a big open source proponent, if we can share that with others and other people can learn from it, they can iterate on it. Because even like oil I mentioned, like that was kind of based off of Vim Vinegar. So it's just the ability to take something and say, oh, I want to tweak it this way. And then maybe that takes off is just going to accelerate the whole industry.
This makes me think about another thing we talked about last time, which was like agent design. And another thing people do often, I think, is they give like a lot of tools to agents. But the tools that it probably understands best are ones that like already exist, like Vim and grep.
That concept of like if you have a task to do in the real world, you could make a custom robot to do it, like a very custom like packaging robot or something to do a particular task, or you could just make a humanoid robot and have it use all of the tools available for humans to just do the same task. So it's this kind of same thing of like maybe instead of making all these weird custom tools for AIs, we should just like give it the same tools that us developers would use to make things like Vim and some of these other things. But I love the analogy of the human robots using human tools. Like, don't make a bunch of different robots that do a bunch of very specific things. Just make a humanoid robot that can use all the same tools that humans do to accomplish a bunch of different jobs.
It's a similar analogy, but there's also a slight difference where I feel like as programmers, we don't really appreciate how flexible and powerful our tools are, like Vim and Git. Vim and Git can just do so much, and grep, that was the term I want to say. They can do so much, and like almost no one knows like even a small fraction of it. So like, it's like it would be kind of really weird to program only using nvim-c. It would be very strange for a human to do that, but you could, and maybe it would work for the LLM.
Lots to explore.
One more thing about the chat Vim plugin is that MentabBot is a contributor. If you go to the commit history, you'll see it migrated me from the OpenAI SDK to Light LLM. So originally, the only LLM was GPT 3.5 Turbo, dark days. But for a while, I used Light LLM's proxy to like proxy it. Eventually, I was like, I should just change the plugin. And you can see it wrote this commit to change it to a Light LLM, and it almost worked, I guess. As you can see it, this is really old though. It's better now.
Jake, thank you for that walkthrough. It's really great seeing your workflow, how you've built things with Vim, how you incorporate different tools into it, and yeah, just sharing your general experience has been really valuable. Before I let you go, anything you want to mention to the audience?
So I write at j3k.com. I wrote a blog post about Vim and LLMs and a blog post about using the Vim terminal instead of tmux. And I also have a Twitter j3k_, and use Mentad. It's got a free tier. Try it out.
Absolutely. Jake, thanks again. Ty, pleasure as always. Talk to you guys soon.
See ya.